Nintendo has been having its fair share of criticism with the Switch 2, and honestly, I feel it is incredibly deserved. You see, the Switch 1 was a fantastic console, even though it got cracked and was able to be emulated pretty much almost immediately. The fact that there were so many great things about that system really outweighed a lot of the negatives. The problem, though, is the pendulum of Nintendo's hubris, and dare I even say massive amounts of recent greed, thanks to Doug Bowser. Of course, you couldn't make this up. The guy who's running the company of Nintendo is named as the main villain of the main mascot of that company. Literally the best. I'm being facetious there. That's really not the best, by the way. Has caused this company to, in fact, do some of the most ridiculous and insane things you could possibly imagine. Everything from bricking consoles if a user decides to buy a used video game off a marketplace, and then it turns out that game was also used on a MiG Switch cart, to turning around and requiring an online patch for day one usage of a console that should have its features ready to go at that very moment out of the box. But you see, there's more to this than just that. I have had my fair criticisms about Nintendo game key cards, a literal piece of plastic for a game key that does not have the game at all inside, but merely gives you access to the digital version of that game. Basically asking the question, if I'm going to buy something that's going to give me a digital copy of it, why buy the physical version at all? And I know what some defenders are going to be saying in the comment section.
Oh, but you can trade it back and forth with your friends, and then that way you don't have to worry.
That's not the point. This isn't about trading digital goods. It's about actual ownership of those digital goods, which really nobody has at all today, especially with how things have been going, and especially even more so with how Nintendo treats its digital goods, which is why, if you live in the EU, you should in fact sign the Stop Killing Games petition. But you see, here's the thing about game keycards. It turns out that according to a couple of journalists, it may be the fact that people are noticing these games are digital-only products and are not purchasing them. In fact, we've seen it happen all before, where the game keycard only has two options for the actual publisher or developer that is a third party on the Nintendo Switch 2. You either got to pay the full fat, give me the entire game keycard purchase, or you get the digital one, or you just get a code. And that's really the only option available to you as a customer and even as a publisher. This, of course, puts more pressure onto the publisher as well, trying to have Nintendo control more of the entire pipeline of game development on their plastic box and console, but also provides a bad experience overall for the direct collector and consumer of Nintendo products as well, or even any game being put onto that platform. Basically, Nintendo is putting publishers and developers between a rock and a hard place. You either give us more money for the game keycards, or you have these specific versions as well, which are only digital. And then that puts the consumer in a bad predicament as well. Someone who wanted to have a physical product because they don't want to be tethered online to a portable device continuously, and then say, oh, I'm not just going to buy it at all, which apparently is what is in fact happening, because it turns out that according to Christopher Dring a few weeks back, like we talked about before, there are publishers and developers saying that their games being sold on the Switch because of the game keycards are selling far below their actual expectations. In fact, there may be some truth to this too, because Nintendo had a meeting with their board of directors where they were asked if those game keycards were impacting sales of third-party games, and they of course did everything but answer the actual question. So with all that being said, with all the history of the game keycards happening, what happened yesterday? It turns out that Nintendo is now gauging player opinion on the Switch 2 controversial game keycards in Japan. That's right. Now is when they're putting out a survey showcasing, hey, do you guys know about game keycards? Do you understand game keycards? Are they a problem for you all of a sudden? And my whole take on it is this: if they were not an issue, this survey wouldn't be happening. The fact that this survey even exists points to me saying that, hey, it turns out that publishers and developers are in fact pretty pissed off that people aren't buying digital game keycards on the Switch 2 causing a lower amount of sales for those publishers and developers, and Nintendo may in fact be trying to gauge and figure out what exactly is the problem. Hell, you know what? I'll even do it for them right now. Nintendo, come here, look at me real close, real quick, okay? You had the easiest W of all time with this console and this platform. All you simply had to do was give people the exact same thing they had for the Switch 1. The full game on the cart and not requiring online. But you couldn't even do any of that now, could you? Simply just give publishers and developers more options for game keycards and this wouldn't be a problem at all. But of course, you can't even do that basic thing now anymore. But let's see what actually happened in the survey and go from there. Question 1. Did you know that Nintendo Switch 2 package software includes a game card called a game keycard? With the answers saying, I own game keycard software, I don't own game keycard software, but I know about it, and I don't know about the game keycard software. The second question says this. Do you know anything about the characteristics of the game keycards? Please select all that you know. 1. If you have downloaded the main game data, you can start playing without connecting to the internet. 2. When playing the game for the first time, you will need to download the game data via the internet. 3. Free space on the device's internal memory or micro SD express card is required to download the main content. 4. You can play the game on another console by downloading the game data and inserting the keycard. 5. You must insert the keycard into the console to play the game. And 6. I never knew any of this. Now this right here, this little section of these second questions and answers reads more to me like an instructional guide about game keycards rather than actually finding out what the real problem is. Because the real problem is the fact that people do not trust Nintendo on their own digital storefront or the lack of actual ownership Nintendo provides you on their digital space as well. We've seen that happen time and time again when they close down stores and shops of other previous consoles. They don't bring anything over to the next generation. Or how about the fact that everything that you bought on the Wii shop is no longer accessible, but they want to have you go ahead and access everything that you purchased before through drip-fed content, like of course Nintendo Online, through different expansion packs to make you pay more for that online monthly service every single time. It's almost like they're doing it in their own like Nintendo-like solution, which really offers nothing beneficial for the customer or the consumer at all whatsoever. And this goes to show that what they're trying to do is not figure out what the issue is, but in reality, in my opinion, what they're trying to do is actually educate the people in Japan more about game keycards than anything else. And of course, the last question is this. After reading the above explanation, if you wanted to buy a piece of software and there was a game keycard or a download version available, which would you choose? Please choose the answer that applies. I want to buy game keycards as much as possible. I would rather buy a game keycard. I can't choose either. I would rather buy the download version. I want to buy the download version as much as possible. This is a massive red flag for me. Not only is the question directly talking about, like what we said before, more coaching you as a customer about game keycards to try and increase those sales, but also does not provide a proper answer of, I want to buy a physical version that is not required to be online or downloaded. That's what's really missing in all of this. Simply put, Nintendo is totally avoiding the problem and the issue at hand directly. Just like they avoided the questions to their shareholders when they refused to answer if game keycards are impacting third-party publisher sales on their platform. This is exactly the issue that Nintendo is totally avoiding altogether, and they're going to continue to avoid this problem until it bites them in the rear end, and people will then choose to not put more games on their platform, which means reductions of sales of other third-party publisher games and even deals access on their platform, to then even reduce possible users on that platform directly. Now, I know, but Alex, the Switch 2 sold 5 million units in like 3 days. You're just coping. No, the thing is this, the Nintendo Switch 2 could have been the ideal console to purchase right now in this day and age. I felt the actual price of the console wasn't too bad compared to the Steam Deck. The problem is the myriad of issues and hamstrings that Nintendo is applying to this console directly, which is the main factor and issue. Having to have that direct online connection to, in fact, make the console work the way it's supposed supposed to. Game keycards being a major push into an all-digital future that Nintendo is trying to do in the first place, more so than even PlayStation or Xbox right now, which is kind of wild when you think about it, because those publishers are dying to let go of physical media in every sense of the word, and the fact that Xbox is even putting out games as physical copies with like 85 megs on the disc in the first place really is the more insane part of all of this. That's their own keycard version right then and there. And then on top of that, the fact that Nintendo is notorious for not giving you proper ownership of your digital goods and has been incredibly litigious into putting people down that want to play simply older games that are no longer available for sale, yet at the same time, not sell those games to the public at all in any sense of the word. That is the major issue that we're seeing across all of this, is the fact that Nintendo is avoiding the real elephant in the room and deciding to not do something about these game keycards and simply saying, hey, we're going to provide publishers with different types of versions and different sizes, so that way everybody can get what they want, which would make things even better, because if they just did that in the first place, they'd have people buy more games directly. They wouldn't have to worry about game key cards or surveys or even like weird questions from their actual shareholders. They would just go through and put their games on the platform and everybody would be happy. I don't know why this is such a major issue for them in the first place. Again, a Nintendo-like solution for a problem that's already had a solution for itself for the longest time. But you see, I'm not the only one that is catching this directly, because people are now seeing this, the fact that the box art of actual games is becoming much more difficult to spot, whether it is in fact a game keycard or simply a download code. Here is Dreaded Gold Guy on Twitter saying this: Activision Blizzard, game keycards exist, yet you still had the balls to go with a code in the box. That's just a whole new level of scumminess. That's beyond my comprehension. And you can see the image there in the smallest font possible that they can place on the box directly. Game card not included, and simply just having a download itself. Again, this is in fact the scummiest direction in both senses of the word. One, it's super scummy for Microsoft, who owns Activision Blizzard, let's not mince words about this, going around and doing this in the first place. Why even pay for the box to be printed and put on the shelf if you're just going to sell the code directly? And two, Nintendo not even giving an option for the customer and publisher to say, hey, look, we're not going to charge you X amount of money for just one type of game key card. You can have multiple variations of it and then provide to the customer for the best way possible. That way, Nintendo would be free and clear of any anti-consumer behavior, but then it would all fall on top of Microsoft and ABK to determine whether or not who's really being the scummy one. Because right now, you got two pigs in shit, if you ask me. But the better part of all of this, or shall I say the more insane part of all of this, is the true defense of these kinds of practices from Nintendo and even the gaming industry. I mean, take a look at this. Here's Kerr Pink Furry saying, the whole anti-Nintendo discourse lately comes from people who believe they are entitled to illegally own Nintendo games. It's always the same red herring for these guys. It's every single time. It's always, you're just mad at Nintendo because you just want to pirate the video game and steal it. Just admit it, you thief, you liar. You will never go ahead and take down Glorious Nippon and Nintendo doing it. Horrible, horrible human being that you are. No, that's not the case at all. The reason why there is anti-Nintendo discourse, which isn't even anti-Nintendo, it's people criticizing a company that should be the first person to go through and do proper pro-consumer moves in this industry, which used to put out great fucking games in the first place and do things the right way the first time and be an example, is that they're turning around and following the exact example of all the companies we lambast as well from everybody else. PlayStation, on Xbox, we're looking at Nintendo to be like, yo, can you guys not be like everybody else and pick it the up, please? That'd be great for once. But what do they do instead? Hey, you got to connect online. Hey, here's a game key card of a game you don't actually even own. Hey, here's digital key cards, which didn't even make sense in the first place at all because you already had the game bought attached to your account. It's not about you want to pirate the game. It's about the fact that the company is doing everything possible and putting even more roadblocks in front of you as an actual paying consumer to simply just own the game in the first place. If they just let you own the video game, there wouldn't be any anti-Nintendo discourse, which in reality is just criticism towards Nintendo being anti-consumer. But you gotta sit there and do the Squidward Gok 9000 on that thing. Jesus Christ, all the way to the base and tongue in the balls on this mother. But you see, it's not just the game keycards that are an issue. Apparently, it turns out that the Switch 2 is not the generational leap everybody has been saying. Well, every fanboy has been saying. Because according to VGC as well, here's what's going on with Donkey Kong Bonanza. Donkey Kong Bonanza's director has said he's aware of occasional performance issues spotted by the press, and so the development team has prioritized fun and playability. Now, I want to go ahead and bring this to your attention real quick, okay? Most of the time, now not all the time, most of the time, the gaming press literally does not care about performance in video games. That's pretty much how we've seen it normally. They usually try to avoid talking about it overall, especially in their reviews. When the gaming press themselves, who avoid talking about performance issues, besides Digital Foundry and etc., are talking about, hey, this game has hitches and performance issues in places that it shouldn't, that should be a massive red flag. This gaming industry and this gaming press consistently go out of their way to avoid having those conversations altogether, and they've done that since the 360 era. Now all of a sudden, when they're talking about it and it's happening to a Nintendo product, now we're having an issue, right? Now it's a problem. No, the thing is, it's an issue because if the gaming press is talking about it, that's a problem, period, altogether. That's not a good sign. That is a massive red flag. And the craziest part is, like Hazardor Gaming himself said on this tweet reply, shows exactly what I'm talking about. If PlayStation and Xbox said this while asking $80 for a game, they would have been 100% crucified. And he's not wrong. If Xbox and PlayStation even asked for $70 for a video game and they said, oh guys, the performance issues, look, we're just prioritizing fun and playability. Trust me, don't worry about that 1 FPS drop that'll totally ruin the entire gaming experience for you. Listen, playability and fun. That's what's important, am I right? Now give me the $70, you clowns. Give me your money. Just give me the fucking money. Just put the money in the bag. I swear, this is why you work minimum wage. Give me the money in the bag. Because even the article makes things a lot worse for Donkey Kong Bonanza and their performance and what Nintendo is in fact focusing on. Speaking to Spanish outlet La Vanguardia, Nintendo's Kazuya Takahashi was asked about the frame drops the interviewer noticed when playing the game. Quote, there are several factors to consider, Takahashi responded. First, we intentionally used effects like hit stop and slow motion to emphasize impacts. Second, we used voxel technology. There are times when there are major changes and destruction in the environment. We're aware that performance may drop slightly at these times. However, as you say, overall the game is smooth, and at points where large-scale changes occur, we prioritized fun and playability. Here's the problem that I have with all of this, is that everybody's been talking about the Cyberpunk video with Digital Foundry, saying that it's better than the Steam Deck, saying how much the Switch 2 is like a PS5 in performance or anything else along that nature. If it truly was that set of performance, then it wouldn't be having issues with voxel technology or things like that we've already had plenty of time in this gaming industry. The fact that Donkey Kong Bonanza is being used as an excuse to go ahead and be like, oh guys, whoa, wait, we purposely slow down the game. Those freeze times, yeah, when the game stops, we did that on purpose, you guys. That wasn't part of like our entire thing. And this right here is my major issue with all of this, and the fact that Donkey Kong Bonanza is in fact having frame stuttering issues. You could see it in the trailer itself, especially when people are talking about how the Switch 2 is this godlike console that has all this performance like the PS5 or the actual Xbox Series S and X. It's better than the Steam Deck, and fanboys have these entire weird self-flagellating relations with this plastic box, even though it is simply just an SoC put on by Nvidia in the first place. These consoles are hitting a limit to where they are, and game devs and studios have to be better about these things directly. Prioritizing the fun and the playability are great things overall, absolutely, but the playability is directly tied to the frame rate of the game. If I'm getting 60 FPS and that some bitch falls to 2 FPS for a few seconds, then back up to 60, guess what? The playability of that game is in fact ruined completely. This is another massive excuse for Nintendo overall. We're not talking about the Switch 1 and its 7-year-old, 9-year-old aging hardware. We're talking about a brand new SoC. We're talking about DLSS 4 on the Switch 2. We're talking about all this power and efficiency. Yet for some reason, the second game coming out of this console is now having having issues with frame rate, instability, and on the top of that, frame stutters. So great, this is going to be exactly what you clowns wanted from the very beginning, but the actual excuse of the producer directly saying, hey, we wanted to prioritize playability and fun, and we used voxels, so, just the frame rate's fine, you guys, don't worry. The pass this company gets is honestly inconceivable. The fact that people are now accepting of these kinds of things from the Nintendo Switch 2, but they're not accepting it of other consoles simply at the same price bracket or even just a little bit more expensive is something to behold. If you're going to sit here and claim that this little handheld is capable of putting out the same performance as the PS5, and it clearly does not, and the Steam Deck competes with it directly and even beats it at many points as well, then what are we even doing here? You can't talk about the power narrative when literally your console is battery powered, my boys. But we'll see what happens when Bonanza comes out, and I'm sure DF will do their research on the entire thing. And if it's good, then DF, of course, is totally right. They're not an issue at all. And if it's a bad set of performance, then DF is paid off by Xbox and Microsoft and Sony to put down the Nintendo Switch 2. Either way, fanboys are going to fanboy, and I'll be here to catch them on that way out directly. Don't you worry. But you know what? Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments section down below. Are you expecting Nintendo to finally retract on their game key card fiasco? Do you think Bonanza is going to run as good as people say it is, or are they just getting the Nintendo pass? And I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about the entire thing. Now, if you want to see more of this kind of content, more gaming news, PC port reviews, Steam Deck videos, fanboy content, and gaming hot takes like this, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 87,000 subs, and I just want to say thank you guys so very much for all of that. If you want Discord access or most during live streams, become a YouTube member. It's as low as $1. If you don't want to spend the buck, don't sweat it. Saturday nights, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, come on down to the live stream. Trust me, you don't want to miss as I get basically insulted with AITTS for about 5 hours. It's a hell of a show. With all that being said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great one, and I'll see you gooners next time. Peace!